In film school, they always say, write what you know. And what do I know? I know South Central Los Angeles.
When John passed, the only effect that I could think about is that, he stole my story.
1 out of every 21 Black American males will be murdered in their lifetime, most by someone they know. This chilling statistic opened Boyz and the Hood in 1991, a film that didn't just tell a story, it issued a warning. For many, that warning faded when the credits rolled. But for the cast who brought it to life, reality was just beginning. What followed were Oscar triumphs, shocking crimes, and fates so twisted they seemed ripped from the very script that made them famous. A visionary's gamble.
Everyone who's involved in this film is involved in it because their hearts are involved. You see what I'm saying? It's not because we're into it.
The force behind. Boyz and the Hood was not just a story about South Central. It was the will of one young man who refused to let Hollywood tell his truth for him. That man was John Singleton. At only 23 years old, freshly graduated from the University of Southern California's film school, Singleton was already turning heads as one of its brightest emerging talents. He had twice won the school's top screenwriting prize, but what he was about to attempt went far beyond student acclaim. It was nothing less than a battle to own his narrative, and he would risk everything to win it. What Singleton eventually delivered was more than a screenplay. It was his life on paper. Like Trey Styles, the film's central character, Singleton had been sent by his mother to live with his father in South Central Los Angeles, a decision that shaped his worldview and gave the film its moral backbone. Every corner, every friend, every struggle he'd known became part of the script. The characters weren't Hollywood inventions. They were stitched from his own lived experience. That's why, when people later spoke of the film's raw honesty, it wasn't because Singleton had researched hardship. It was because he had survived it. He wrote the entire script in just 3.5 weeks. The urgency hit him after seeing Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing in 1989. Leaving the theater, Singleton realized something profound. If Brooklyn could have a voice, why couldn't South Central? His answer was to create a story that was unapologetically West Coast, gritty, real, and unfiltered. To keep himself immersed, he wrote while blasting the harsh, pulsating beats of NWA and Eazy-E, the same sounds that roared through the neighborhoods he was chronicling. When his script landed at Columbia Pictures, the executives knew they were holding something powerful, but they weren't sure about the man behind it. Giving a multi-million-dollar production to a 22-year-old first-time director seemed reckless. Their offer was tempting. $100,000 for the script, but only if a veteran director took over. For most young filmmakers, that would have been a dream come true. For Singleton, it was an insult. He remembered his father's advice. Act like you don't need what they're offering. Sitting in the boardroom, Singleton refused to back down. He told the executives no one from Idaho or Encino could ever capture the reality of South Central. It wasn't arrogance, it was conviction. And against all odds, Columbia relented. They gave him not only the script rights, but a $6 million budget and the director's chair. The script touched nearly everyone who encountered it. Stephanie Allain, a young executive inside Columbia who fought tirelessly for the project, called it the most powerful script she had ever read, recalling how it left her in tears. Laurence Fishburne, already a respected actor, reacted the same way. He wept after reading it, recognizing in its pages an unfiltered reflection of his own community's struggle. But a remarkable script was only the first hurdle. Singleton now needed actors who could embody the truth he had poured into his pages. Hollywood had its own ideas. Big names, big draw, executives floated Will Smith, then a rising TV star from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, for Trey Styles. For Furious Styles, Trey's father, they considered Eddie Murphy, one of the era's most bankable comedians. Those choices would have guaranteed box office buzz, but would have gutted the film's authenticity. Singleton didn't want a star vehicle, he wanted a story that felt real. Nowhere was that more evident than in his choice for Doughboy. Singleton wrote the part for only one man, O'Shea Ice Cube Jackson. At the time, Ice Cube was famous for incendiary rap lyrics, but had never acted. Singleton chased him across Los Angeles, cornering him backstage at the Arsenio Hall show and at concerts, insisting he was perfect for the role. Ice Cube doubted him, assuming the studio would eventually hire a known actor like Todd Bridges from Different Strokes. His first audition proved his skepticism. He came in unfocused, distracted by touring. Singleton exploded, reminding him, "I wrote this for you." After a private talk about the role's importance, Ice Cube returned and delivered a performance that stunned everyone in the room. For Furious Styles, Singleton went straight to Laurence Fishburne, and their connection ran deeper than either expected. Years earlier, when Singleton was just a teenager working as a security guard on Pee-wee's Playhouse, he had slipped Fishburne one of his scripts, a seed planted long before Boyz and the Hood took root. Fishburne's presence on set was transformative. Though only 7 years older than Cuba Gooding Jr., who played Trey, he became a mentor to the entire cast. Producers nicknamed him Yoda. He coached Ice Cube through Doughboy's heartbreaking final scenes, reminding him that real strength could be found in showing pain. He quietly encouraged Nia Long, who was struggling with an emotionally intense scene, to let go completely, and she did, delivering one of her most memorable moments. He even suggested Angela Bassett and Tyra Farrell for pivotal roles, adding depth to the film's emotional landscape. Casting decisions sometimes came instantly. When Morris Chestnut and Cuba Gooding Jr. auditioned together, their chemistry was undeniable. Singleton simply declared, "He's Ricky, he's Trey," and walked out for lunch. The decision was that effortless. The payoff for this commitment to authenticity was extraordinary. Boyz and the Hood premiered at the Cannes Film Festival to a 20-minute standing ovation. Critics hailed its unfiltered portrayal of a community long ignored or misrepresented. Yet, the same honesty that gave the film its power also carried danger. Shooting in gang-controlled neighborhoods exposed the cast and crew to real threats. And for some of the young actors, those dangers wouldn't stay on set. They would follow them into life itself. The aftermath.
Ricky!
Boyz and the Hood closes with an unsettling epilogue. Trey survives and heads to college, while Doughboy is murdered a short time later. But for the actors, that fade to black was only the beginning. Over the next 3 decades, their fates would prove just as dramatic, unpredictable, and at times more harrowing than the story they helped to tell. The film's opening warning that young black men faced devastating odds for survival would tragically manifest itself in real life for some of its own cast. Perhaps the most shocking fate befell Lloyd Avery II. On screen, he portrayed one of the film's most unforgettable villains, the gunman who ends Ricky Baker's promising future in a single burst of violence. It was a chilling sequence that forever etched his face in the memories of audiences. Yet, before the film, Avery was far from any stereotype of a street kid. He grew up in a stable middle-class home, attended Beverly Hills High School, and was described by colleagues as mild, even meek. But as the movie found its audience, something in Avery began to change. Friends claimed he started to mirror the very role that had brought him notoriety. Director John Singleton himself later remarked that the young actor became the part. Avery moved into an area controlled by the Black Pea Stones gang and immersed himself in the streets he once mimicked on film. Soon he was missing auditions, clashing on sets, and drifting into violent behavior. His brother Che would later call it the Tupac syndrome, a compulsion to prove toughness when no such burden truly existed. By 1999, the spiral had reached its breaking point. Avery was arrested and charged with the shooting deaths of Annette, Lewis, and Percy Branch in a drug-related dispute. He was convicted of double murder and sentenced to life in prison. Behind the bars of Pelican Bay, another transformation occurred. Avery embraced Christianity, became deeply religious, and even earned the nickname Baby Jesus from fellow inmates. Yet his rebirth was short-lived. In September 2005, Avery's cellmate, Kevin Roby, a self-proclaimed satanic Christ, strangled him to death as part of a ritual. Guards discovered Avery's body arranged on a pentagram 2 days later. He was just 36. Avery's tragic end wasn't the only case where Boyz and the Hood blurred into reality. Dedrick D. Gobert, remembered for his role as Dookie, the laid-back friend always sucking on a pacifier, was killed only 3 years after the film's release. In November 1994, Gobert went to watch an illegal drag race in Mira Loma, California. An argument there turned deadly when a man named Sonny Enraka opened fire. Gobert was fatally shot, and a friend who tried to protect him was killed as well. Gobert was only 22. Enraka was later captured and sentenced to death. While those stories reinforced the film's grim prophecy, others experienced a completely different reality. Cuba Gooding Jr., whose Trey escaped South Central through discipline and guidance, found his own path out of the neighborhood of Hollywood's supporting roles. He won an Academy Award in 1996 for Jerry Maguire, cementing himself as a major star. But success was uneven. Gooding later confessed to enduring 10 years in the wilderness, headlining formulaic comedies and critical flops like Snow Dogs and Boat Trip. And in later years, personal troubles overshadowed his career. Dozens of women accused him of misconduct. In 2022, he pleaded guilty to one charge of forcibly touching a woman in a New York nightclub. The plea deal spared him jail time, but his reputation had permanently shifted. He also quietly settled a civil case in 2023 before trial. For Gooding, like Trey, escape came, but the journey through manhood was far from simple. Ice Cube's reality diverged even more starkly from his character. Where Doughboy succumbs to the streets, Cube transformed early fame into empire building. He became a prolific actor, co-writer, and producer, launching enduring franchises like Friday and Barbershop while producing Straight Outta Compton, the story of his own legendary rap group. Rather than being destroyed by the Hood, he reshaped Hollywood itself. Morris Chestnut, who played Ricky, avoided both his character's fate and the downfall that plagued some colleagues. Ricky never lived long enough to claim his football scholarship. Chestnut, meanwhile, cultivated a steady, respected career spanning decades. He starred in hits such as The Best Man franchise, primetime shows like Rosewood and The Resident, and earned a reputation as one of Black Hollywood's reliable leading men. Decades later, fans still greet him on the street as Ricky. Instead of irritation, Chestnut treats it as a blessing, a reminder of how hard he once fought for a chance at any role. The parental figures of Boyz and the Hood carried their gravitas far past South Central. Laurence Fishburne, the indelible, furious Styles, became an international icon in the Matrix trilogy John Wick, and of course, television staples like Blackish. His steady authority in Singleton's film mirrored the career stability he maintained. Thereafter, Angela Bassett, radiant as Trey's mother Reva, evolved into one of Hollywood's true legends. Her career-defining transformation into Tina Turner in What's Love Got to Do with It earned her an Oscar nomination, and decades later, another nomination arrived for her commanding performance in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Nia Long, who played Brandy, Trey's smart and determined girlfriend, likewise built a remarkable resume. Love Jones, Friday, The Best Man. Her portfolio grew into a catalog of black cinema classics. Long has often pointed out that Boyz and the Hood was her first real feature film role, giving her both visibility and the confidence to trust herself as an actress in a fickle industry. Together, the fates of the cast mirrored the complexity Singleton wanted the world to witness in 1991. Some fell to violence, some climbed to unimaginable heights, and many carried both triumph and hardship across their lives. In doing so, they turned Boyz and the Hood into more than a film. It became a haunting prophecy, a career-making catalyst, and a mirror reflecting the turbulent realities of the world outside the theater. The drama didn't end when the credits rolled. It followed them all into life itself. The unseen conflicts.
It's a campus that's kind of like a microcosm for America itself. America's becoming, they say more conservative, but it's almost like more fascist.
John Singleton had already won his first battle just to sit in the director's chair. Columbia Pictures reluctantly trusted him with his own script. But once filming began, the studio still wanted to shape his vision. Executives pushed for changes, including a fistfight between Ricky and Doughboy near the climax. Singleton agreed, believing it did raise the tension. But when they demanded a final scene where Trey explicitly tells his father he didn't avenge Ricky's murder, Singleton refused. Ambiguity mattered. He wanted Trey's inner struggle to linger, leaving audiences unsettled and searching for answers. That defiance gave the ending its lasting power. The tension wasn't just creative. Authenticity invited real danger. Fictional gangs drew directly from Los Angeles reality. Doughboy's crew resembled the Rollin' 60s Crips, while Ricky's killers reflected the Bloods. The real Crenshaw Mafia Bloods, unhappy at how they were portrayed, simmered with resentment, a reminder that the line between art and life was precariously thin throughout the shoot. Hostility exploded weeks later, not on set, but in theaters. Boyz and the Hood premiered in July 1991 to rave reviews, but also violence. Fights and drive-bys broke out at screenings across the country, leaving more than 30 people wounded and at least 3 dead. The media responded with fury, accusing the film of glorifying the very bloodshed it was condemning. But Singleton fought back. He reminded reporters that he hadn't created the conditions for violence. He'd only held up a mirror to them. Pulling the movie from theaters, he argued, would amount to artistic racism. Far from promoting chaos, the film ended with a direct plea: increase the peace. Beneath the headlines and controversy, Singleton also embedded layers of meaning most viewers never recognized. Hidden in plain sight, these details revealed how carefully he crafted every frame. One of the most forward-thinking moments came from Furious Styles. His impromptu lesson on gentrification predates mainstream conversations by years. He explains how liquor stores and gun shops saturate black neighborhoods, how property values are manipulated until residents are pushed out. The message was radical in 1991. Today, it sounds prophetic. Other secrets were cinematic homages. The sequence of boys walking down railroad tracks to see a dead body was Singleton's tribute to Stand By Me. Yet, he altered the meaning. For white, suburban kids in Rob Reiner's classic, seeing death was a shocking loss of innocence. For children in South Central, a corpse was just another stop in the day, an indictment of how normalized violence had become. Producer Steve Nicolaides even revealed that Doughboy's fading walk at the film's end echoed the closing of Stand By Me, a subtle nod even Reiner never noticed. Singleton also slipped humor into the tension. His original dream was to cast the entire NWA crew, but Ice Cube's bitter feud with Eazy-E made that impossible. So Singleton improvised. During a barbecue scene, he placed an extra in a "We Want Easy" t-shirt, only to have Cube's friends pummel him. A cheeky jab at one of hip-hop's fiercest rivalries, hidden inside a film about brotherhood and survival. Other coincidences were darker, even chilling. The dead body scene was filmed barely a mile from Florence and Normandy, the very intersection where, less than a year later, the Los Angeles riots erupted after the not guilty verdict in the Rodney King trial. Singleton hadn't just captured a community's tension, he set his cameras on the very streets where history itself would soon explode. For Singleton, Boyz and the Hood was never just a film. It was a mission to tell stories rarely allowed on Hollywood's screens, to reveal humanity behind the headlines, family behind the stereotypes, and truth behind the statistics. His fight with studios, his battles with the press, and his attention to hidden details all served one purpose: to make sure the world saw South Central for what it was. For his cast, it was the beginning of careers that would endure for decades, while for audiences, it was a film that has never lost its power to provoke, inspire, and unsettle. But for some, the line between story and street was erased forever. The final haunting words of the film belong to Doughboy, spoken just before he walks away into his own unseen fate. Either they don't know, don't show, or don't care about what's going on in the hood. That single line became heartbeat of Singleton's vision. It was the truth he had been fighting to put on screen, the reason he battled executives, defied stereotypes, and demanded authenticity at every step. It was also the truth echoed by the lives of the cast themselves, young men and women whose paths would lead to triumph, tragedy, and sometimes mirror the very cycles the movie warned against. Boyz n the Hood was never just entertainment. It was a warning, a memorial, and a challenge to the world to pay attention. For audiences everywhere, the film's power was undeniable. Once you heard Doughboy's voice, once you saw Ricky's fate, once you felt Trey's struggle, you could never again say you didn't know.